You're in danger. Fear is what gets your adrenaline going and makes you decide very, very quickly to take action. So basically, God don't make no junk, and fear is one of the things that God made, and if we use it appropriately, it's good for us. And talking about deficits is not negative thinking, it's being honest. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to get honest. Anything is possible. Anything can be created. Anything can be achieved, but only if you decide it is and then take the steps to make it happen. And you can't decide without enough information. So that's what has been called fear talk around here, information. But this meeting is about information. Some of it is information you've not heard before now. Some of it is. So let's take a look by starting at organizational dynamics. That way, right? Yes. This is a bell curve that is just a representation of a ministry over time. And in fact, it could be a representation of any group of people. It's not limited to just ministry. So when a group, let's just call it a church, when a new church is born and starts to grow, there's a tremendous amount of energy. There's generally a shortage of money and resources, but people are so excited and so hot to trot about it that they provide the money and resources as the church grows. And it's very, very high energy time, very exciting. And the growth continues until you reach the dream. This is what we were shooting for. And when you reach stability, when you get your dream, that's when things just kind of smooth out. We don't have to work so hard. We can take it easy now. Everything's perfect. You guys reached stability when you moved in here and cashed the check from the lawsuit. You got really, really stable. It's a wonderful, peaceful place to be, and you get to pat each other on the back, and it feels so good. And if that's all you do, if that's all an organization does, guess what happens? There is nothing in life that stays the same. Everything is either growing or dying. And so with no effort, with the ceasing of effort at the point of stability, the organization will begin to decline. And if it declines long enough, it's going to die. So just after stability, just as the decline is barely beginning, you're going to hear a little bit of conflict, a little bit of people nipping at each other here and there, complaining about this or not complaining about that, or new people come in but they don't get paid attention to because everybody's making sure the way I want it is the way it's getting done. Just a little bit of yappy going on. And then, if it continues and no action is taken, people start taking sides. Those people over there want the shades open, I want them closed. They're wrong, I'm right. And it becomes us against them, me against them. You turn into different camps and different parties. And eventually, if the conflict is strong enough, you begin to drop out. People just stop coming because they don't like the conflict. It doesn't feel good. It just doesn't. But there are opportunities at various points along the way. You're in stability and you're beginning to hear a little bit of nipping going on, and you recognize the beginning of conflict. That just means people don't know what to do. You give them something to do. You redefine what it is you're doing. In other words, you strengthen your mission statement, or you come up with new programs, or you take a look at how your Sunday service is operating. You create a redefinition that if you do it will take you on that upward growth swing again. And you can do that over and over and over again. Typically, redefinition needs to happen every 3 to 5 years. If you miss it, you'll get another chance. That one's called redevelopment. This is where you've got to do some very serious changing of how your organization is structured. And if you miss that opportunity, you're going to have to go through what we call a rebirth. That means you look at absolutely everything you are, everything you believe, you adjust it. The core values you guys created last summer, that was a rebirth because you never looked at what you valued in your hearts before then. Not as a community. You might have as individuals, but as a community you didn't. Quite frankly, you folks reached stability when you moved in here, and the decline began when the money came in for the lawsuit. What happened when the money came in from the lawsuit is that there was no more encouragement for the congregation to support the church. A lot of people gave a lot of money to build this place, to buy this land, to make it all happen. And okay, we made it, we're here, we're done, we can rest now. And that's when the decline starts, when you decide to rest. You see, the truth is people will not give to a budgetary need. We all got our own budgets to manage. We don't need to worry about somebody else's. But people will give to a cause that's exciting and full of hope. Every one of us as a human being needs to dedicate at least a portion of our lives to something that we know is bigger than ourselves. We all need something bigger than ourselves to attach our energy to. You know, we are a generous people, Americans are. And we are very much in need of a cause, both here in this church and we need it nationally as well. A great cause to follow. So, you got into a bit of a flap, and the flap was absolutely not about the land. That was just the little signal, the little flag hanging out there. That's not what it was about. Something else was going on, and please don't hear me today blaming anyone, because that's not what I'm doing. No finger pointing, no blame, because the bottom line is everybody truly does what they believe is the best thing all of the time. Unless you happen to be psychotic, and I haven't spotted that in any of you, okay? So people, you may not agree with the way other people think or with the choices they make, but believe me, there is no blame, because everybody is doing the best they can with the information that they have. But what I am talking about here is community behavior that often isn't even conscious. It's not like I'm going to decide to be conflictive. I kind of slip into it out of habit. It's part of my family growing up. It's part of whatever it is. It's generally not conscious. Well, my goal is to make all of this conscious so that we know what we're actually talking about. And you're probably not going to like the first 20 minutes of this meeting. But I believe that you'll love the way it ends up. And if you do love the way it ends up, I'm going to ask you to get a copy of the DVD. This is being recorded. Get a copy of the DVD and get some paperwork to take with you and share it with the people who are not here this morning. This is going to be repeated. Part of this will be repeated for the rest of the year, all through December. But the more people can see the presentation, the better it's going to be. So you'll love the way it wraps up, so please stay with me even if I seriously annoy you at first. There are some new ideas coming here to this church. One of them is your new minister. She's got a whole bunch of ideas. One of them she and I shared, and I didn't even know it. We both came up with the same thing. So stay with me, but we need to get very, very clear first about what our starting point is before we can act on those new ideas. The simple truth is that there are, roughly 7 billion people on the planet right now? Every one of those people is a mirror for what we need to see and change in ourselves, every one of them. Now, we're not going to each meet all 7 billion people, but every one you meet is there to mirror for you what's up right now, what you need to look at and pay attention to. Give you a couple of examples. President Clinton was caught with his pants down, literally. A lot of people took advantage of that, made a big political fuss over it, and are still making a fuss over it. But you know what? It wasn't about that. He was the mirror to modern society that there is a tremendous amount of misogyny against women. Because you see, people in power, men in power have always done this. Not all of them, but men in power have always done this, and it's always been kind of ignored and pushed out of consciousness, even by the women. Even the women wouldn't admit it. So it's not just about you guys. We girls had a hand in it too. But the misogyny is constant. It's in business, it's in religion, it's in education, it's in everywhere we go. It's better than it was 25 years ago, but it's not done yet. And Mr. Clinton was our mirror for that part of our society. Another mirror was President Bush, taking us into Iraq on the pretense of weapons of mass destruction, which of course didn't turn out to be there. And of course we didn't get out, we just kept on going. But his mirror, what he is mirroring back to us is that we are a violent society. We solve our problems with violence. We have the largest police force, the largest armed forces, and the highest percentage of our population in prisons of any nation in the world. We imprison more people than anyone else does. So Mr. Bush was our mirror for the violence of our nature that we need to look at and do something about. So let's talk about how you guys have mirrored each other. You think the board, some of you, please, some of you, think the board tried to pull the wool over your eyes regarding the land sale. Some have that perception, and I actually heard the words bait and switch once. And I really, really think that whoever said that ought to be handed a bar of soap and made forced to eat it. That's vicious. But you know what the board did or didn't do, what you understood or didn't understand, where the lack of communication, the gap in perception was a mirror for the consciousness of this community. They have mirrored how, for the most part, this church does not take responsibility or act honestly. And this is what it looks like. You all say that you want this church and you want Reverend Darlene as your new minister. But when you vote with your wallets and your checkbooks, the message is reversed. You're clearly saying that you don't care if this church continues and you don't care if there's another minister. That's the real bait and switch. Hang in here with me. I promise it'll get good. These are fiscal year totals of your income right here. And look what's happened. We started 2011, 2012, 3.5 years we're talking about. Look where it's gone. Average monthly income has gone from 21,000 down to 13. Look at the loss in the 2 middle years. The loss for the year, those 2 middle years was almost $70,000. You used to have a contingency fund. This is average monthly expenses by fiscal year. They stayed pretty steady the first 2 years. And then 2013, 2014, they changed because salary and expenses were drastically cut by the board, just trying to get this thing under control. You didn't really know where you were before that because you didn't have an accounting system in place that actually worked. That was not someone's fault. That was not someone trying to fool you. That was someone who had the job who really didn't know what they were doing. And it took Judy to come along and say, wait a minute, let's look at this. And well, I think it was Pat that called your attention to it, wasn't it, Judy? Or did you find it without her? Pam, okay. So the cuts were made in 2013-14, and then your expenses were way down this year because you don't even have a part-time minister. You're just paying guest speakers, which isn't that much. The board has cut expenses by more than $66,000, and the land sale was meant only to buy time. But that's not enough. It won't buy time. And of course, you voted it down, so it's not going to buy you the time anyway. So after reviewing all of the financial statements, it's clear to me that this board has done all it can to reduce expenses short of releasing every paid employee. That's the only move left. And you know what? That won't be enough. That won't be enough to pay the new minister. So, your finances are only the symptom of something else. And since you haven't been looking at the something else, the focus is on the dollars. Looking at the dollars and trying to figure out what to do about that is kind of like putting a Band-Aid on skin cancer to cure it. It's not going to work. It's going to hide it a little bit, but it will not cure it. And once you get that something else figured out and activated, the dollars are going to take care of themselves. I told you earlier that people don't give to a budgetary need. They've got their own budgets to worry about. But they will adjust their budgets, they will adjust their lifestyle, they'll do all kinds of wild and woolly things to support a powerful vision and mission. That's what it takes. You created one. We're going to talk about that a little later, but you haven't done anything with it. You weren't ready yet. So the first thing you need to do on the way to creating the activities that make that vision and mission powerful is to come clean and tell each other the whole truth. That's everybody, board, leadership, members, visitors, new people, everybody gets to hear the whole truth. And what I'm going to show you is going to annoy you even more. It's a painful truth. And you've never seen this information before because it wasn't accessible. None of your board members, none of your leadership had access to it. But I do because of the work I do around the country. We're going to talk about this one, and then I promise you that you're going to like the rest of the meeting a whole lot more. This information was drawn from various Unity churches around the country. They all have congregations similar to yours in terms of age and financial resources. They're all suburban churches. They're not in a big city. They all have, some of their people drive 45 minutes or longer to get to church. So it's not like they're in a different situation economically or geographically than you guys are. They aren't. So here are the comparisons. Church number one. Church number one. Their average weekly income is $4,900. Their average weekly attendance is 56 people. Their average weekly donation per person is over $87. That's pretty high. That's higher than most churches. So let's go to church number two. Average weekly income over $6,000. Average attendance 120. Average weekly donation per person, just over $50. Church number three. This is the only church that I know who it is because it's a friend of mine. Average weekly income, almost $3,100. Average weekly attendance, 62. Average weekly donation, almost $50. Now this church has been in the 60 to 65 attendance range for 10 years. They meet in a converted house that they bought the house next to it and turned it into a parking lot, so they've got the space they need. The Sunday school is in the basement. They really don't have any interest in getting bigger. They're very sound financially, but part of their mission statement is to bring understanding between people of all faiths. That is their mission stated. And they are the single most powerful interfaith leader in the Washington, D.C. area. That's what they do. Church number four, $3,300 a month, average attendance of 70, average per person donation 47. Church number five, average weekly income $2,455, 53 attending, per person average 46. Here's the part you're going to love. What does that tell you? You need to activate the vision and the mission. Now, I know some of you are giving you a lot more money than this. How do you feel about the people who are giving little or nothing? Some of you can't give $50 a week. It just isn't fiscally possible for you. But you know what? Everybody could give a little more. Even somebody on welfare, everybody could give a little more. $24.12 per person per week will not keep any church alive. And that's where your money has been ever since you got the money from the lawsuit, and that has been used to pay your way instead of training the congregation about what it takes to run a church. The national average of what it takes to keep the doors open, not anything fancy, just keep the doors open, pay a decent living wage to the people who work there, is about $44 a week. Per person. This is how you vote with your wallets and your checkbooks. And if you continue the way you are, you're telling the board you don't care about keeping this place or about getting your next minister. And I promise you, the board is not planning to sell this church. It is the decision of the congregation to keep it or sell it. And that decision will be made with your wallets and your checkbooks. This is how you vote. Does this chart say anything else to you? Some people say, why do we have to keep hearing about money? How about the next time you hear about money, it's to celebrate what's come in. Look what we did. Would you want to hear about money that time? Well, you'll stop hearing about it this way when the church is supported. Because it's irresponsible for the people in leadership not to tell you the truth about what's happening. It's not fear talk. It's not negative thinking. They would be irresponsible if they didn't tell you. So let's look at this chart in a little bit different way. If 114 people, the average attendance at Unity of Mills River, were giving $87.69 a week, your weekly income would be almost $10,000. Push the enter key one more time. If you were giving $50 a week, your weekly income would be $5,700, which is still over $10,000 a month. If you were giving, just hit it twice more. $5,600, $5,400, one more time, $5,200. So I want to ask you, Judy, could you pay all your bills if you were taking in $5,280 a week? Could you afford the new minister at that level? Could you possibly even get financing to repair things that are breaking, like air conditioners and furnaces and leaky walls and that sort of thing? Eventually. You'd have to keep it up for a little while before the bank would believe that you could do it. But eventually you would have a line of credit again, which you couldn't. They tried to get a line of credit, folks. They couldn't. You could do some aggressive marketing too, couldn't you? Perhaps a little bit more community outreach than you're doing right now. You could, perhaps even with this beautiful grounds that you have, with the space, you could possibly even build a school or a retreat center. So why should you want to do that? What could a school or a retreat center do? Anybody remember the book Seth Speaks, written by Jane Roberts back in the 70s? There was one line in that book that I have never forgotten. It's just stuck with me all these years. And Seth supposedly said, whenever an evolutionary leap is about to be taken by humankind, you will see it in your fiction first. And I'd like to remind you of some examples. Jules Verne in 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea. The black and white TV show Flash Gordon in the 50s. How many of you saw the movie The Matrix? It's about a people, a nation, a world sound asleep, hypnotized, run by forces they didn't even know existed. It's about those people waking up and taking charge of their lives again. That's what Matrix is. How many of you are watching the new TV series called Forever? It's about a man who doesn't die. He gets killed, but he doesn't die. He comes right back in another body. That's what our fiction is telling us is coming in the future. The Matrix and Forever. A school or a retreat center would do so much more than be a nice place people could visit, rest a bit, and hear a nice unity message. It can be a place that brings the brightest and the best of the forward thinkers in the world and begins getting people invested in the idea of glorious change rather than fearing disastrous change. You see, the world is changing. There's nothing we can do to stop it. Some people are going to ride through the change kicking and screaming, and some will lead. I believe that with the resources you have, the people, the land, the building, and the money that's potentially here, I believe Unity Center of Mills River is in a position and has the resources to lead this change in a positive way. You don't have this because you're nice folks. You have this because you have a purpose. You're nice folks, but you're nice folks with a very strong purpose. Go ahead and hit that enter key one more time. We pray, love, learn, inspire, play, and heal in our center and our community. Centered in oneness, wholeness, and love, Unity Mills River inspires and empowers all to live joyful, authentic lives. How would that retreat center fit into that vision and mission? You would be praying, you would be learning, you would be inspiring, you would be playing, and you would be healing. You would be doing all of it with something like that. And by the way, the retreat center is the idea that Darlene and I share. We came up with it separately. So, this is your day to decide. It's time to stop hoping for somebody to save you and decide what you want to do. Because folks, the sale of the land, sale of coffee cake, layoffs of the staff, it's not going to save you. It's not going to do it. You're going to have to change the way you're doing this. And one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to make sure that everyone who's not here today somehow gets this message. I know it's being recorded. I know there will be DVDs available. Take them, shove them in people's hands. And here's one other thing that you can do, and you can do it immediately. What I have here is a pile of commitment forms. And I'm going to ask someone to pass them out, make sure everybody gets one, and if there are some leftovers, just stack them back there where Joyce is or something. Let me have one. What you're going to see on this form is an opportunity to make this vision come true in 4 different ways. The first one is state your intention for what you are going to give per week to this church in 2015. Just state your intention. And think about it and pray about it. What would be right for you? What would make you look in your own eyes in the mirror very, very easily? You can also jump up and help immediately by enclosing a one-time gift right now. You can also ask for that phone call by saying, call me, I'm willing to volunteer, I'm willing to give of my time and my talent. Do you understand that the work that Judy has done to clean up your books would have cost you tens of thousands of dollars if a CPA firm had done it? You owe her a huge debt of gratitude. She did it as a volunteer. And if you want to join what they call easy givers here, I called it auto tithe. There's a form on the bottom for you to enter your bank or your credit card information. My hope is that every one of you will fill out one of these. And it doesn't make any difference if it's $5 a week or $100 a week or $500 a week. Just like that fundraiser for Reverend Darlene, it matters that everybody is participating. Every single person. And if you already are an auto tither, if you've already having money deducted automatically from your financial resources, fill it out anyway, because what we want is a grand total. We want everybody's on there. And you may have noticed on your way in today that there is a new thing on the bulletin board saying we have decided to support Unity of Mills River. There are a couple of names up there already. You're just going to go up there with them. How many do you think there will be? 40, 50, 60, 100? Let's go for 115 at least.